Well, joining us now is polls analyst Eric Grenier, the man behind the Writ. Eric, good to see you.
Happy to be here.
Now, listen, you were telling us, we also heard it from pollsters, other polls analysts as well, that it would come down to 7 battleground states. Walk us through the story as you saw it in those states last night.
Yeah, there were 7 states that we were looking at ahead of the election, and in the end, they did turn out to be the closest ones on election night, but they perhaps weren't all as close as we thought. The 3 that were won by pretty solid margins by Donald Trump were Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina. Arizona and Nevada, he won them by about 5 points. Polls going into the election suggested he was favored there, maybe by a point or two, but not perhaps as big as his win was there. He also was able to win in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, and in Michigan and Wisconsin. All of the swing states, at least as of right now. Some of them are still going to be counted and haven't been entirely called, but it does seem like he will end up winning all 7 of the swing states. The polls suggested they're going to be close, and some of them are going to end up being decided by a point or even less. But it was always going to be like this because it was as close as it looked. If Donald Trump beat his polls by about 2 points, he was probably going to win all of the toss-up states. If Harris had beaten her polls by about 2 points, she probably would have won all of the toss-up states. So it looked like it was going to be close. It was perhaps a little bit less close than we might have expected, but in the end, it looks like a bigger landslide perhaps for Donald Trump than the numbers actually suggest.
Yeah, because for Kamala Harris to win, she needed to hold the so-called blue wall states, in particular, as you said, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and if not those, hold Georgia and North Carolina. Those things did not come together for her, and this is despite the fact that she reinvigorates the Democratic Party after taking over from Joe Biden, but then underperforms compared to Joe Biden. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was pretty significant how much the Democrats underperformed their performance in 2021. Joe Biden won 51% of the vote in that election. He beat Donald Trump by about 4.5 percentage points. Once all the ballots are counted, it looks like Trump will beat Harris by about 1.5 points. So that is about a 6-point swing across the entire country in Donald Trump's favor. And in about 3,000 counties that are across the country, Donald Trump did better at almost all of them. You can only find maybe 10% of those counties. You can see it on that map, where the Democrats actually did better than they did in 2020. So it wasn't just in the swing states. You see it in some of the states that are usually pretty safe for the Democrats: Illinois, New York, New Jersey. They still won them, but the margins were a lot closer than last time. So Kamala Harris, she underperformed across the country, not just in the swing states. So that's why we're not only seeing that Donald Trump is winning the Electoral College vote, but also seems to be on track to win the popular vote as well.
Yeah, seems to be on track, as you say. But talk to us about the cohorts here, because I'm wondering what demographic actually pushed Donald Trump over the top, or if not demographic, what issues pushed him over the top?
Well, it's clear that if you look at the exit polls, and exit polls are always a little bit unreliable in the first kind of day or two after the election, but they get a bit better later on. But if you look at those exit polls, it does seem that Donald Trump did better among pretty much every demographic group. There was a few that did where Kamala Harris did better than last time. These are white, college-educated women primarily. That was pretty much the only cohort where the Democrats did much better. Donald Trump did better among men, women, people of color, especially Latinos. Some of the exit polling suggesting that among Latino men, Donald Trump did about 35 points better than in the last election, and 17 points among Latino women. So that might have put him over the edge in some of those states, especially ones like Arizona, Pennsylvania, where he's outperforming the polls. So you can't really highlight one demographic group because it does look like it was pretty broad-based, Donald Trump's increase in support. But the Democrats' inability to get out some of their traditional bases rather than kind of doubling down on their more urban, educated voter base seems to have been one of the reasons why they lost this election.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you say broad-based when it comes to Trump, and we have been seeing this realignment of the Republican Party base since 2016. So how would you describe that party today in terms of the coalition it represents?
Well, I think the biggest change is that the coalition right now represents a majority of voters. Donald Trump looks like he'll end up getting somewhere around 51% of the vote. He's the first Republican presidential candidate to do that since George W. Bush in 2004, and only the second in the last 30 years. So it does show how that coalition has grown since 2016, because the electoral map itself is almost identical to what it was when he won in 2016, but he's got a lot more of the vote. Now, that coalition is still predominantly white, male, Christian, less likely to have a college education. But you do see that he did make inroads among people of color, among women, had support in the suburban areas, very strong in the rural parts of the country. So that coalition that elected him in 2016 is pretty much the same. It's perhaps a lot bigger and a little bit more diverse than it was 8 years ago.
And as a result, we are going to see Donald Trump once again in the Oval Office. Eric, really appreciate the insight. Thank you for this.
All right, thank you.
That's Eric Grenier.